On a quiet evening, the unthinkable happens. Pastor Thomas More, consumed by a shocking secret, confronts his father, James. In a fit of rage sparked by deep betrayal, he not only severs ties with his father, but gruesomely dismembers him. The horror doesn't end there. Thomas's wife also falls victim to his fury in a similarly tragic act. What could drive a devoted pastor to commit such atrocities against his own family? Subscribe and stay tuned to uncover the dark secrets behind his rage. Welcome to Shocking True Crime Stories HQ. A big thank you to all my viewers, and a special shout out to my subscribers for your unwavering support as we explore famous and hidden true crime stories. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more fascinating content. In the heart of a small Georgian town, where the church bells resonate with the daily rhythms of life, Pastor Thomas More stands as a beacon of hope and integrity. Known for his compelling sermons that weave together threads of spirituality, ethics, and community values, he is not just a spiritual leader but a cornerstone of the community. Each Sunday, he fills the church with powerful words that uplift and challenge, drawing a congregation that hangs on his every word, seeking guidance. Beside him, through every sermon and community event, is Susan Moore. With a poise that belies the complexities of her role, she navigates her life as both a minister's wife and the mother of 3 vibrant children. Her grace and composure are not just surface traits but are woven into the fabric of her being, making her an indispensable partner to Thomas in life and faith. Together, they form a duo that exemplifies partnership and devotion, revered by all who know them. Their home is a reflection of their life's work, a place brimming with love, laughter, and learning. Here, their 3 children, each with their unique traits, add color and energy to the Moore family mosaic. The eldest, Hannah, at 16, mirrors her mother's reflective nature. A scholar at heart, she is often buried in books, her mind always probing the deeper questions of life. Her keen interest in history and genealogy makes her the family archivist, tracing the lines of their past with a meticulous hand. 14-year-old Thomas Jr. carries his father's name and much of his demeanor. Quiet and supportive, he is the steady presence in both the family and the church youth group. His gentle spirit and willingness to help others make him a quiet force within his circle, embodying the family's values in his calm, understated way. The youngest, 12-year-old Luke, brings a different energy. Playful and spirited, he ensures that there is never a dull moment in the Moore household. His laughter is contagious, his antics a frequent topic of conversation. He represents the joy and innocence of youth, reminding everyone around him of the simpler pleasures of life. Together, the Moores navigate the complexities of modern life while holding fast to their faith and values. Their home, open and welcoming, is a hub of activity. Church meetings, family dinners, and endless discussions about faith, life, and the future. It is in this setting that the family thrives, their interactions a dance of love, respect, and mutual support. Yet, beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect tableau, there are undercurrents that even the most devout family cannot wholly predict or control. As the Moores continue to lead and inspire their community, they remain unaware of the challenges that lie ahead. Challenges that will test their bonds and beliefs in ways they never imagined. So, what happens when the very foundation you've built your life upon starts to tremble? Stick around, subscribe, and join us as we explore the depths of faith and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unforeseen trials. Every Sunday, as the morning mist still clung to the grounds of their small Georgian town, the Moore family gathered at the venerable home of James Moore. At 65, James was not merely the patriarch of the Moore family but a bastion of unwavering faith and moral clarity within their community. His home, much like his life, was anchored deeply in the traditions of their faith, walls lined with worn Bibles and portraits of generations who had walked the path of righteousness before him. On these Sundays, the air inside James's home was thick with the aroma of a hearty meal and the sound of laughter as the family converged under his roof. It was more than a mere weekly gathering. It was a ritual that reinforced the familial and spiritual bonds that had defined the Moores for decades. The dining table, a large oak affair that James had built himself in his younger years, held more than food. It held the legacy of the Moore family. Around this table, the family didn't just share meals but also shared their lives, their triumphs, their fears, and their unwavering commitment to each other and their faith. James, with a voice that had softened over the years but still carried an authoritative timbre, would lead the family in prayer before they ate. His prayers were thoughtful, often weaving in reflections from the past week's services and scriptural meditations that challenged each member to live a life of greater purpose and connection. After the Amen, as dishes began their rounds, the real conversations started. These discussions were an eclectic mix of biblical debate, community gossip, and plans for church activities. James often used these talks to subtly guide his younger grandchildren, embedding within their lively chats nuggets of wisdom about life's bigger questions. He believed in the power of stories and used tales from his own life to illustrate deeper truths, much to the fascination of Hannah, Thomas Jr., and Luke, who absorbed these stories with wide-eyed interest. As the afternoon sun began to wane, these gatherings would often culminate in a more formal study session where James would take a particular piece of scripture and dissect it with the family. These were not dry, rote recitations but dynamic discussions that encouraged even the youngest to question and understand their faith actively. It was here, in these spirited sessions, that the family's doctrine was not just taught but tested and affirmed, strengthened by each other's perspectives and experiences. Yet, it was during one of these cherished Sunday meetings that the seeds of a looming crisis were unwittingly sown. Hannah, with the bright-eyed enthusiasm characteristic of youth, brought forth a suggestion that would unwittingly alter the course of their lives. Seated at the head of the long oak table, her voice carried over the laughter. "What if we all did a DNA test? I need it for a school project on genealogy, but think about what we might uncover about our roots." Her proposal, innocent and spurred by academic curiosity, sparked a wave of excitement among her siblings. Thomas Jr. and Luke buzzed with the prospect of discovering tales of distant relatives, perhaps woven into the annals of history as knights or explorers. Yet, amidst this bubbling excitement, a subtle shift occurred in Susan's demeanor. Her usual serene expression clouded over with a trace of concern. The idea of a DNA test, with its probing into the very fabric of their biological history, struck a nerve. While her children fantasized about noble lineages and exotic connections, Susan's mind raced with the potential implications such revelations might hold. Her voice, when she spoke, carried a hint of hesitance. These tests, they aren't always as accurate as they claim, and they can be quite invasive. Her words hung in the air, a gentle but firm attempt to temper the rising enthusiasm with a dose of caution. Her concern was not merely about the intrusion into their personal lives, but about the unknowns that such an exploration might unearth. Thomas, ever the pillar of support, reached across the table, covering Susan's hand with his own in a reassuring gesture. "It's just a bit of fun, a family activity for the kids and helpful for Hannah's project. What could possibly come from it that we can't handle as a family?" His tone was light, attempting to allay her fears with the strength of their unity. Convinced by Thomas's optimism, or perhaps resigned to the inevitable curiosity of their children, Susan relented, her smile returning albeit tinged with residual apprehension. The decision was made. The kits were ordered that very evening, a seemingly innocuous click on a website setting the wheels of fate into motion. As the weeks passed and the day arrived for the results, the initial thrill had transformed into a cocktail of anticipation and dread, particularly for Susan. In the heart of the Moore residence, under the soft glow of the living room lamps, a family clustered around the flickering light of a computer screen, their faces a mosaic of anticipation and curiosity. This was the moment the Moore family had awaited with a mix of excitement and unease, the unveiling of their DNA test results. What began as a light-hearted journey into their ancestral past was about to take a turn, steering them into uncharted emotional waters. The mood was thick with anticipation. The children leaned in closer, their eyes wide, eager to connect the dots of their genetic heritage to far-flung lands and historic tales. Thomas, with a steadying hand on the mouse, clicked through the profiles, his voice a comforting narration of what appeared on the screen. "Here we go. Let's see where our story began," he announced with a cheer that belied the tightness in his chest prompted by Susan's earlier apprehensions. As the digital pages scrolled past, revealing maps and percentages, ethnic mixes and migratory patterns, the family's shared history unfolded in vibrant detail. Laughter and playful guesses filled the room. Perhaps they were descended from medieval knights or wandering poets. Each possibility tethered them more deeply to the rich tapestry of humanity. But as the journey through their genetic past deepened, an unexpected deviation in the data emerged. Thomas's voice faltered, his finger hesitating on the mouse. The room fell silent, the air suddenly heavy. The results were unequivocal, yet they made no sense. "This must be a mistake," Thomas murmured, his eyes scanning the information again. The profile showed that the children, indeed, shared each other's DNA closely. Yet, there was a glaring discrepancy. Thomas himself was not linked biologically to any of them. The weight of the discovery settled over the room like a thick fog. Eyes turned towards Thomas, then to Susan, whose face had drained of color. In that instant, the fabric of their family felt as though it was unraveling, thread by thread. Thomas's heart pounded, a tumultuous beat that echoed his crumbling certainties about the life he had built, about the truths he had held sacred. "What does this mean, Dad?" Hannah's voice was a small, fragile thing in the vastness of the moment. Thomas looked at his children, his vision blurred not just by the tears that threatened to fall, but also by the cascade of implications each one brought. Susan, gathering the shards of her composure, finally spoke, her voice a whisper of its usual calm. "There's a lot we need to discuss," she said, reaching out to Thomas, who seemed anchored to the spot by his shock and the piercing sense of betrayal. In the hours that followed, the foundation of everything Thomas believed, his marriage, his parenthood, his very identity, was called into question. The man who had stood before his congregation week after week, proclaiming faith and family values, now grappled with a personal crisis that threatened to undo him. This pivotal moment would mark the beginning of a profound journey for Thomas and his family, a journey through layers of secrets and lies, towards either a breaking point or a hard-won reconciliation. As the story of the Moore family continues to unfold, stay tuned and subscribe to witness the resolution of a family tested by the most unexpected of trials. How will they navigate the treacherous waters of such a revelation? Only time will tell. The stillness of the night was broken only by the faint hum of crickets outside the Moore residence. Inside, however, silence had a different weight. It pressed against the walls, thick and suffocating, as Thomas sat alone at the dining table, his head in his hands. The DNA test results lay before him, stark and unrelenting, their cold truth carving deep fissures into the life he thought he knew. Every moment of joy, every word of faith, every sermon of trust he had preached now felt hollow, like echoes from a life that no longer belonged to him. He replayed the revelations in his mind, over and over, until the anger began to rise, slowly at first, like a tide creeping in, then all at once, consuming him in its wake. The betrayal burned hotter than anything he had ever felt, searing through his chest, turning love into fury. He thought of his father, James, the man who had shaped him, taught him faith, and stood as the moral pillar of their family. Could James have known? Was he complicit in the lies that now threatened to rip apart everything Thomas held sacred? His thoughts shifted to Susan, the woman he had shared his life with, the mother of his children, the one person he believed he could trust beyond question. Her silence in the face of his anguish felt like confirmation of guilt. The room seemed to shrink around him. The walls closing in as rage took over reason. In a fit of uncontrollable anger, Thomas confronted James first. The words between them escalated into violence, and the man who had once been Thomas's rock became the first victim of his rage. Consumed by fury, Thomas didn't stop with a confrontation. He dismembered his father, the act as brutal as the emotions that fueled it. But his anger was far from spent. Susan, the woman he had loved and trusted, bore the brunt of his unrelenting wrath. The violence spilled over, and in a moment of blind rage, he dismembered her too, the acts unthinkable and horrifying in their finality. By the time the authorities arrived, the scene was beyond comprehension. Blood stained the walls that had once echoed with laughter and prayer. The man who had stood as a symbol of faith and righteousness now sat amidst the devastation he had wrought, his hands trembling as he stared at what he had done. The trial that followed sent shockwaves through the community. Thomas More, once the moral compass for so many, stood accused of the most heinous crimes imaginable. His life sentence was not just a punishment, but a grim testament to how far anger and betrayal can drive a man. The community that had once revered him now struggled to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the horrors he had committed. For the Moore family, the damage was irreparable. The children, now orphaned by their father's fury, were left to grapple with the weight of his actions and the truth that had shattered their lives. The community, left reeling, questioned not just the man but the faith he had preached, their trust forever fractured. Thank you for joining me in recounting this harrowing story. If this narrative has left you as captivated as it has me, please subscribe and stay connected for more stories exploring the depths of human nature. Your support allows us to bring you these gripping tales. Until next time, take care of yourself and those you hold dear.